While in lockdowns there are moments where one can almost forget all the madness going on, at least for those who have the luxury to work from a home office, get a paycheck or have a garden to enjoy. What about those who don't have that? And what madness! The one-sided news reports, the repetitive indoctrinations by certain news channels and so-called experts, the sudden removal of personal freedoms, the many followers who cheer and clap the governments, or at least quietly endure the restrictions. However, by now most start worrying about the future. The storm is coming. Growing up in Germany, I and of course many others wondered how a totalitarian regime could rise to power, why people went along, how it was possible. Now we see firsthand how it works. Through fear of a disease or an enemy, a warlike situation, molding us into a brainless collective like a dumb herd of cows. Where are all the brave journalists, activists and critically thinking intellectuals? Here are some impressions from the Corona front, which in my opinion are all distorted, and some thoughts. First, let's look at nurses and doctors.
I'm tired. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna try to sleep, and then we'll be back tomorrow. I want to say that, the things that I see in the ER are scary. I'm a little scared myself.
Another shift at work.
Dr. Evelina Graver documented parts of her day for us. Half are well below the age of 60. People who just days ago had no health issues.
The real picture is that the disease is way more severe than anybody could actually imagine. I cry. I think that's okay to actually say the fact that I do allow myself to, at a certain point, feel. Now I'm about to walk into the unit. Be safe, everyone.
But she tells me if we could see what she's been seeing every day, no one would ever live.
You walk in, and it's hard for me to say, but you can actually smell fear. You smell death.
I really don't want to belittle the hard work nurses and doctors do, but there's now a number of studies, like this one, where data from the Diamond Princess cruise ship was analyzed, where roughly 4,000 people were in quarantine with around 700 infected, and a handful of them died. So for instance, what was investigated was the case fatality ratio and the infection fatality ratio. This is the number of deaths per known cases of infections, but of course the cases of infections might be underestimated. Another issue is also that there's a delay, the death doesn't happen immediately. And the other quantity was the important infection fatality ratio. This is not the deaths per number of cases, but the number of cases now corrected to represent the total number of infections. This is a more important one. So here roughly 700 cases of infections, and including the delays, there's a number of deaths, 7. And of course the age group was also quite high, so it also had to be corrected for the age to represent what happens in a population. And then the SRR overall case of infection rate reported in the data from China was 2.3%. This suggests that the corrected one in China during that period was only 1.2%. And the important infection rate, where the denominator is now corrected, was only 0.6%. Of course, with some uncertainty now. Unlike previous studies, we have uncertainties now reported. Based on cases and deaths reported in China up to March 4th, the calculation was considerably higher than the corrected one we estimated here. So 0.6, this is not significantly different from influenza, maybe a factor 4. Also in the German town of Hamburg, a medical examiner has now started doing autopsies to really see if people who died with the coronavirus actually died of the coronavirus, to establish a causality, which is completely missing so far. And amongst the 50 cases he investigated, none of the cases was caused by corona. All these people died because of serious previous illnesses. Some of them were not even known to the individual, but the autopsy clarified that. So how does it all fit together? Of course, air pollution, age group, underlying health issues play an important role, and it could be different from region to region. What is surprising in these video clips from the nurses and doctors is that they appear very emotional. This is surprising because people have a calling to do what they do. And often people do what other people cannot do. And that individualism is wonderful. For instance, medical examiners can examine corpses in postmortems, which other people could never do, and we don't applaud them. They just follow their calling. It's what they do. Same with the nurses and doctors, who are known to have exceptional emotional stability and endurance, and they don't faint when they see blood or see a needle. And after all, COVID-19 is not like Ebola, which can push doctors and nurses to their limits, because the disease comes with diarrhea, vomiting, and bleeding. It's a horrible disease. The second example is CNN reporter Chris Cuomo. He's infected by the coronavirus and he's under quarantine at home. And he's constantly reporting on this and giving updates. Let's just listen to this for a little bit.
All right, so here's what I've learned. Here's the secret to kicking this virus. It's not a pill or a potion. It's about your will and devotion. The virus wants us to lay down. The virus wants us to take it. Other than the blessed few, the rest of us who get this are going to have an experience unlike anything else they've ever had. Days and waves. The old notion of get in bed and stay there when you get sick, it sounds great. And if you're really up against it, you need to do as little as possible. I've been there. Trust me, I know. But you can't stay there.
When someone says, trust me, don't trust them.
Now I am wise to the beast and its ways. It changes. The fever is just softening us up. It's making your body hurt, so you don't want to move your body, because what it wants to do is get in your lungs. That's what it wants to do. I feel it constricting my chest. When I had that chest x-ray done, I saw that infiltrate right away.
It's again about an individual case. We always see individual cases, quite emotional and so on. But surprisingly, even though this guy says he has a coronavirus and he's ill with constant fever, he keeps talking and talking. And he apparently reads stuff off from notes, as we can see. He also distorts a picture of the virus. It's not like we are humans and once in a while we get a virus or bacterial infection. We are surrounded by viruses. We have co-evolved with viruses and microbes in general. Microbes have been on this planet for almost 4 billion years. So all the multicellular organisms and humans came of course much later and have co-evolved. We have 2 kilograms of bacteria in our body, in our intestines mostly. These are completely symbiotic to us and help us survive, keeping our immune system sharp and helping us digest food. Talking about the beast is completely nonsensical. We always have viruses and bacteria in our body. And our adaptive immune system exactly helps with these issues. Once in a while there's something dangerous coming along and the adaptive immune system raises antibodies and then we are temporarily immune until it evolves and mutates again. This is a normal life cycle. Duh. Again, I'm surprised he has the energy to talk every day to explain the situation. Here I remember a rule from first aid courses I attended. You come to a scene of an accident, let's say a car crashed into a tree, and there are 2 people in the car. One is screaming like hell, and the other one doesn't move and is completely quiet. Who do you help?
I want you to take the time to remember a very special man. His name is Dr. Frank Gabrin. Now, Frank was an ER doctor and 2-time cancer survivor, so he knew how to fight. And he spent his final days tending to patients in a New Jersey hospital. When he was there, he knew he was compromised, he knew he was exposed, and he caught the virus himself. He died within a week, passing away on Tuesday in his husband's arms before help could arrive. Dr. Gabrin's husband, Arnold Vargas, is with us, along with their close friend, Deborah Vasilich. And I'm happy to have you both here. Obviously,
you just want to help people. You want to just...
No comment. The third example is the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He said he also caught the coronavirus and was in self-quarantine at home. And here he gives an update. And after that update, he apparently even went to intensive care for a while. So let's see what he said a couple of days ago when he still was at home.
Hi folks, quick update from me on campaign against coronavirus. First of all, in my own case, although I'm feeling better and I've done my 7 days of isolation, alas, I still have one of the symptoms, a minor symptom of I still have a temperature, and so in accordance with government advice, I must continue.
His voice is quite dry. The eyes seem a little red. So far consistent.
By self-isolation until that symptom itself goes. But we're working clearly the whole time on our program to defeat the virus. You'll have seen the big announcement yesterday about 100,000 tests per day by the end of the month. This country has made a huge effort, a huge sacrifice, done absolutely brilliantly well in delaying the spread of the virus. Let's stick with it now. Remember that incredible clapping again last night for our fantastic NHS. We're doing it to protect them.
Really? Just last October, most probably forgot, the Conservative voted against a motion to save the NHS from privatization. Technically, there's no healthcare system anymore. Only in 7% of the cases you can see a doctor. There are basically no dentists anymore. The dentistries are all closed. So it's more likely now as a young person to die of an infected tooth than of corona. What madness is that? What for?
To save lives. Let's focus on
Bullshit.
Everything we can. Stay at home, folks. Protect our NHS. Save lives. Speak soon.
Smile. Here he is shown as one of us. At home in the home office, alone, this wrinkly shirt, messy hair, sort of miserable. But he's not one of us. Before he became prime minister, he made £800,000 a year, and now he's sort of around 200,000, which is a huge salary for the UK, where the average income is, I think, 20,000 a year. So you can't compare these numbers with the US, for instance. And so here they personify him, they humanize him. But the government is an institution. It is prepared to work under all conditions possible, including wartime. There's a huge cabinet, there's a huge number of support staff, there's a medical team, they're equipped with anything you can imagine. So this guy has the best healthcare you can think of. And he's pretending to be one of us. He's not. And he is surprisingly calm. He's smiling, but the economy is crashing. And everyone is clapping. For what?
It can't be said for all other British businesses, and the immediate effect on the economy inescapable and beyond imagination. The BBC contacted 17 of the 21 top independent economists surveyed by the Treasury to assess forecasts for the economy for April to June. The updated numbers are incredible. Have a look at the last 10 years. Outside of the 2008 financial crisis, the economy has grown and sometimes fallen by 0.3, 0.5%. In this quarter, the fall anticipated by these economists is on average over 14%, and that ranges from a minimum forecast of 7.5% down, extraordinary enough, to as much as 24% down, a temporary loss of a quarter of the economy. The only precedent for moves of this size and speed is what happened a century ago at the start of the 1920s depression.
No one talks about the economy, said we're going into a huge depression. No one talks about the single moms with the 2 kids in a small apartment going crazy without grandparent support or closed playgrounds. No one talks about the anxieties this causes for people at home, the depressions, the suicides, the destroyed families and businesses. No one talks about it. What the hell is going on? Fourth, I wanted to talk about Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor. He in a recent press conference. It's in German and I don't have the subtitles. Let's just play it for very brief.
Frau Bundeskanzlerin, Nordrhein-Westfalens Ministerpräsident fordert jetzt eine offene Debatte, wie diese Lockerung in welchen Schritten geschehen soll. Das mache den...
Now, one of the ministers in one of the countries in Germany wants an open debate, how it continues. She looks down, makes a really dumb, sad face. She doesn't like it.
Menschen Hoffnung, sagt er.
This is to give people hope.
Und er mahnt, dass diese Krise auch sehr große Schäden anrichten kann, häusliche Gewalt,
And he points out that this crisis could also lead to violence at home, psychological damage,
und Arbeitslosigkeit. Teilen Sie die
and huge unemployment.
Sorge?
Do you share these concerns?
Oder befürchten Sie jetzt einen Wettlauf um die Exit-Strategie unter den Ländern? Und eine ganz persönliche Frage.
Unfortunately, that's a compound question that makes it hard then to read into it a lot. You don't get the immediate response.
Welche Lehren ziehen Sie aus dieser ja in Ihrer Kanzlerschaft größten Krise als Politikerin?
So here's a little mouse shrug. She didn't like that. She asked, what kind of personal consequences she draws from this crisis.
Als Mensch, ganz persönlich.
even as a human.
Also für das Zweite muss ich Ihnen sagen, es ist noch zu früh. Das können Sie mich dann mal fragen. Wir stecken jetzt ja mittendrin in.
So the second question she deflects because she's in the middle of the crisis, so she doesn't want to reflect on it yet.
Der Anspannung und die ist schon gewaltig. Wir alle wissen noch nicht, wie das weitergeht und ich bin sehr froh, dass wir in der Bundesregierung sehr gut miteinander arbeiten, dass da auch Vertrauen zueinander ist. Ich bin sehr froh, dass wir mit dem Ministerpräsidenten so gut zusammenarbeiten.
So the most characteristic feature of Angela Merkel is her mouse corners. The sad mouse corners which go down on both sides, which are a sign of severe sadness, loss and pain. The only other times I've seen this recently in other people is with a nanny from New York City who butchered 2 young children, cuts them up basically and then try to stab herself. So here we see also the mouse corners going down. There's a severe sign of sadness. And the other case is the Turpin family. I think it was in California quite recently. And these parents kept their 13 children captive the whole life, didn't let them out, tortured them, abused them. And with the father, we see as well the mouse corners going down. I wonder if this facial expression and the overwhelming pain and sadness these people must have experienced or somehow received makes them immune or insensitive or ambivalent to the suffering and pain of others. That this is a signature of psychopathic behavior. I'm finishing with a brave German foreign minister who went into politics due to Auschwitz.
Erstmal ist es wichtig, dass es solche Orte wie hier in Dachau gibt, dass wir an das erinnert werden, was in Deutschland geschehen ist. Und dass daraus eine besondere Verantwortung in Deutschland erwächst.
How is it possible then that politicians like him don't ring the alarm bells in the current climate? And the president of Germany, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, in Israel.
And I wish I could say that we Germans have learned from history once and for all. But I cannot say that when hatred is spreading.
Then why are you not doing anything? God damn it, why?